Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani Diane Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani Diane Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Oh, well, hello, Darla, you're so old. Darla, it's so nice to have you back here in the dale. You're looking well, Darla, fresh from hell. Darla, you're still tramping, you're still vamping, you're still... Is that a gun? What the fuck's up with that? Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast. I'm film scholar Noelle LaCroix.
And I'm story expert Lani Diane Rich of Chipperish Media.
And we're here today to talk about Angel, the 7th episode of Season 1. Angel was written by David Greenwalt and directed by Scott Brazil. This is the only episode of Buffy named for a character, and it earns that distinction.
Yes, no, it definitely does. This is the episode where things start getting really serious with Buffy. And everybody who loves Buffy, I think, starts really loving it at this episode. But a warning before we begin, every episode of Still Pretty talks about each episode within the greater context of all of Buffy, and as such is fully spoiled. All right, let's go on patrol. We open Angel with the Master whining about how Buffy's killed all his favorite pets and trying to figure out how best to super kill her as he takes advice from his vampire council.
It wears thin now. Colin, what would you do about it?
I'd annihilate it.
Out of the mouths of babes.
At the Bronze, Buffy is focused on one thing, Angel. Buffy bails early from the party and is accosted by the Three, the very terrifying vampire trio the Master sent out to attack her. Luckily, Angel's lurking in the shadows and he helps her out. They run back to her house where the vamps can't get her, but Angel's hurt. Buffy sneaks him up into her room where he stays the night. She sets him up on the floor of her bedroom and the romantic tension grows thick between them.
Angel? Do you snore?
I don't know. It's been a long time since anybody's been in a position to let me know.
The Scoobies gather at the library where Giles presents the exposition. The Three is a dangerous group of vampires, and having failed to kill Buffy, will offer their lives to the Master in penance. Buffy trains with Giles after school, then comes back at night to find Angel still in her bedroom. They have a cute misunderstanding about him reading her diary, which he didn't, but then the confessions get rolling.
I did a lot of thinking today. I really can't be around you. Because when I am...
Hey, no big water. Over the bridge,
all I can ever
under
think
the
of
bridge,
is how
over
badly
the
I
dam.
want to kiss you.
Kiss me.
They kiss, and as things get heated, Angel vamps out. Buffy screams and he jumps out the window. At school, Buffy tries to find a loophole for the budding relationship, but Giles assures her that Angel can't be a good person. Xander, of course, offers a helpful perspective.
You're in love with a vampire? What, are you out of your mind?
Angel goes to his apartment to find Darla waiting there for him. We discover that Darla and Angel have a history, and she's not thrilled that he's palling around with the Slayer.
Talk to her. Tell her about the curse. Maybe she'll come around. And if she still doesn't trust you, you know where I'll be.
At school, Giles tells the story of a vicious vampire named Angelus who ripped a bloody swath through Europe before coming to America about 80 years ago, at which point he shunned other vampires and appeared to have stopped killing.
So he is a good vampire. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being someone who's killing and maiming every night, and 1 being someone who's not.
The Master and Darla hatch a plan to make Buffy kill Angel. Darla pretends to be a school friend of Buffy's, gets invited into the house with Joyce, and attacks. Angel shows up to rescue Joyce. Darla tosses him Joyce's unconscious and bleeding body, and Buffy comes home. She throws him out.
You're not welcome here. You come near us and I'll kill you.
Buffy gets Joyce to the hospital, where she thinks she had an accident with a barbecue fork. Buffy plans to kill Angel and goes to collect weapons from Giles's completely appropriate collection in the school library. Meanwhile, Darla works on Angel to get him to kill Buffy when she comes for him, hoping to bring him back into the evil fold.
For 100 years, you've not had a moment's peace because you will not accept who you are. That's all you have to do. Accept it. Don't let her hunt you down. Don't whimper and mew like a mangy human. Kill. Feed. Live.
While Buffy goes on the hunt, Giles sits with Joyce, who tells him about Darla. He rushes out to tell Buffy. At the Bronze, Buffy finds Angel, and they fight as he tries to get her to kill him.
Simple.
I invited you into my home and then you attacked my family.
Why not? I killed mine. Killed their friends. And their friends' children. For 100 years, I offered an ugly death to everyone I met. And I did it with a song in my heart.
Angel tells Buffy about the Romani curse that restored his soul and the torment he's lived with since. He tells her he wanted to kill her tonight, and Buffy offers him the chance. He doesn't, but then Darla attacks with guns. Because, hey, why not?
So many body parts, so few bullets. Let's begin with the kneecaps. No fun dancing without them.
Angel and Buffy fight Darla, and Angel dusts her, saving Buffy, then disappears off into the night. The Master mourns the loss of Darla as the Anointed One comforts him. The next night at the Bronze, Buffy sees Angel and they decide that they can't be together, then kiss as the cross he gave her burns a mark into his chest.
You okay?
It's just
Painful. Now.
Okay, Lani, or
Yes.
should I say story expert Lani Diane Rich, New York Times bestselling author of, among other things, romance. Talk to me about Buffy and Angel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I was watching this episode with you in mind. I know and absolutely love your theory about the foundation of a good romance being a couple who work well together as a team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first interaction that Buffy and Angel have in this episode. And then later we hear from Darla that she and Angel, or maybe it was Angelus, were a great team. So I want to know. Tell me about the romance here.
Okay. Well, yes. The best romances are built from people who work really well together as a team. A lot of times in romance, we have this kind of thing where it's like, I'm hot, you're hot, let's be hot together. And the fact that they're both pretty is usually enough for lazy writers who don't want to tell a really good romance. But what works really well about this is not just that they work well together, which is always a great thing in any kind of romance, but that his very existence is the exact opposite of everything she stands for. And that creates a great romantic conflict, because to tell a great romance, you need both people who work well together, who are a good team, but also who have a strong romantic conflict at the center of that relationship. And one of the things romance writers are constantly searching for is that great romantic conflict that seems insurmountable, but in the end is conquered by true love. So that's essentially what romance is all about. And it's what what we go to romances for. What happens with a lot of romances, especially since the age of moonlighting, is that they just end up bickering. They're just so different. He's just so annoying. And that's the entirety of the romantic conflict, which doesn't really hold up that well. It functions okay. It can give you something that can be some fun, but you really need to have something at the core of these two people that makes them, have to be together, and yet they can't be together. So what we have here is an absolute perfect example of that essential romantic conflict. They want to be together. They work well together. They've got this great chemistry, but they can't be together because he's a vampire and she's a slayer, and that's it. Like, there's no getting around that. And sometimes we'll see things in romances where there's some kind of misunderstanding, and if the two people just spoke to each other, everything would be fine, right? Like, the classic, I saw you down the street with your arm around a girl, and he's like, it's my sister, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's not real conflict. Real romantic conflict is something that you can't talk around, that no matter how much you talk, it's not going to make Romeo not a Montague,
Yeah.
So, that's the kind of thing that you really want with this kind of romance. And I think this is part of the reason why Buffy and Angel are such an iconic romantic story, because they do have that conflict right at the center of everything. We see that kiss at the end, and the cross that protects her burns a mark into his chest. Beautiful, beautiful visual representation of this wonderful, essential romantic conflict. And actually, not long ago, when I was finishing up season 7 for the video series part of Still Pretty, I did the episode Touched, where I talked a lot about Buffy and Spike, and kind of talked about the difference between a romance and a love story.
Yes.
A romance has this romantic conflict. It's these two people. They want to be together. They can't be together, but they work so well together, and they're such a good team, and there's wonderful chemistry, all of that, yada, yada, yada. That is a classic, wonderful buildup for a romance. Later on in the series, we're going to have big discussions about, of course, Buffy and Spike, a character who has not shown up just yet, but will, not too long from now. But the thing is with Buffy and Spike is that that's not a romance. Like, he's a vampire, she's a slayer, but that's not at the core of their romantic conflict. There's a lot of things that are at the core of that conflict.
Yeah.
But essentially what it is it's a love story. And love stories are just different. Love stories are not necessarily romantic, but they are very much about a deep connection and affection between two people. And so both kinds of stories have incredible value, in both ways. You can have a romance without a love story, and you can have a love story without a romance. If you end up having both together, which is, I think, what we end up getting with Buffy and Angel, though Buffy and Angel are much more star-crossed lover romance than they are really true love story. And I know that the Angel and Buffy chippers out there are going to have an issue with that, but just understand there's a difference between the thing that is primarily a love story and the thing that's primarily a romance. Buffy and Angel are primarily romance. But we have a ton of valuable love stories throughout the run of Buffy. I mean, we've got Buffy and Giles, which is a wonderful love story. We've got Buffy and Willow, which is another wonderful love story. Xander and Willow are also a great love story, and we see that kind of culminate at the end of season 6. Tara and Willow are a romantic couple, but they are much more a love story than they are a romance. There's nothing at the core. They're two witches. There's nothing at the core of who they are, that makes them incompatible or makes the romance impossible. And so they really are just a story about two people who love each other very much. We get that later on when Buffy's sister Dawn arrives in season 4 or in season 5. So we have a lot of love stories throughout Buffy, but this relationship with Angel is the one real romance that is written in this story, and I absolutely love it.
I love that distinction between a romance and a love story, and that you can have one without the other, or you can have both together. It's such a powerful way of understanding relationships in fiction, and I just love that.
It's really fun. And when you think about it that way, it kind of gives you as a writer like a little more control over what you're doing, what you're doing with your story. And when you tell a romance, like the romance the thing about the romance that makes that work is that it's always a romantic story. It's not like, Xander and Willow want to be really good friends, but they can't, and that's what brings it into this really hyperbolic, incredibly heightened place that makes it so much fun. And Buffy and Angel are one of the classics. Like Claire and Jamie from Outlander in the first book, they have a similar situation. That's a fantastic romance. Of course, Romeo and Juliet is a great example of romantic conflict. I don't know if it's a great example of a love story. They're just two dumb kids, but but that's there. And that's a great example to go to when you're talking about romantic conflict. No amount of talking is going to make Romeo not a Montague,
Right.
And no amount of talking is going to make Angel not a vampire. So no matter what, they have to find a way. The love between them has to be strong enough to, overcome the apparently insurmountable. And this is a story that we're going to be telling, throughout the first 3 seasons of Buffy as we go through, their relationship. And it's wonderfully done. And it's so fun. This first beat of that story is so fantastic. I love this episode. So what did you think about the episode overall?
Overall, I think the episode is really, really excellent. I do not respond to the romance the way that you do. And I don't know. I don't know if that's just me. I don't tend to gravitate toward those kinds of stories in general, because I read a lot of the tropes and the trappings of romance as kind of creepy. So when Angel is, when Angel is sort of, lurking around, I understand that the show wants us to see that as sort of sexy and mysterious. And to me, it's just creepy.
I completely understand that. Like Edward from the Twilight series, right? He's stalking her. It's creepy. But part of, I think, how that appeals to a romantic sensibility is this idea that he loves her so much he can't stay away from her, and that does translate into creepy behavior. And there is some of that. I'm absolutely not going to tell you that it's not there, because you know what? It's there. It's absolutely there. But it's not as bad here as it is in some other instances. And Angel's, lurking is also partially a protection thing. He knows things that she doesn't know. He is trying to help her, with the work. And so I always see his lurking more as a coworker thing than as a romantic thing. So it doesn't strike me as creepy in the same way that Edward and Bella from Twilight are.
Right. He's not stalking her, but just for me, there's this huge imbalance in power. He's much older than she is. He knows things she doesn't know. He can find her, but she can't find him.
He knows where she lives. She doesn't know where he lives. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah.
And I realize that is not necessarily part of the romance, but that makes it difficult for me as a viewer to root for them as a couple. Does that make sense?
No, especially if you actually think about it, he's 240 years old. She's 16. She's also the Slayer. And while she is technically a child, right? She's coded as a woman. And this is one of the things, the same way that anything sentient in any story is coded as human, whether or not they are technically human, they're all coded as human. We read them as human. And so that's something that we've got here, which is a problem with Angel. Because if Angel was a human guy who was 22 and she was 16, I'd be like, gross. He's 240 and she's 16, and yet because of her being coded as so much older, because this is told from her perspective and not from his, because they are so well matched, and also that he is coded as young. I mean, he's 240, but he looks, 19, 20, so I mean, that's another thing, is that he is, even though he has all of this experience, all of this age, all of this presumed wisdom, right? That it doesn't feel predatory the way that in any other circumstance, the way that, say, if Willow was dating somebody who was, 20 or 22, would feel predatory. And it's because she's the Slayer, and because of that, it sort of changes that context, although in reality, it's super gross.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she's a child. Yeah.
And I get it. I sort of like the idea that being the Slayer makes her somehow outside of the usual rules about age, because she's being forced to risk her life. And she does have these supernatural abilities. I mean, she's stronger and faster and all of these things. They're so, yes, in the world, she is 16 years old, and that is something that the show, I think, is really working on trying to reconcile. I mean, that's kind of the point of the show, is it not? That she's the 16-year-old girl who is also tied to this ancient line of knowledge and ability. So yeah, it's like the rules of age don't really apply.
Well, the rules of age are really about the power differential, right? Because if you have like an older person who knows and understands things that the younger person does not know and understand, then you have a situation in which a young person can be easily manipulated and, and used, right? And also that it tends to be that when somebody, much older goes after somebody much younger, it does feel predatory. It does feel like it's not about who that person is, but the fact that this older person really wants a young teenager, has some kind of fetish or, obsession or something like that. In which case, as soon as the teenager grows up, it's not love, because the teenager grows up and then, the older person doesn't want that person anymore because they're too old, right?
Right.
So, I mean, there's a lot of these, it's about control, it's about power. I mean, so many times, sexual romantic relationships can be twisted in this thing about power, because Buffy has her own power, because Buffy is stronger. I mean, she's stronger than the vampires. She can kill Angel if she wants to, right? So the fact that she has so much power, that she does, that she has grown up much faster. She is not really naive about Angel. I mean, maybe a little bit in that thing where she's like, well, couldn't he be a good vampire? Like when we get to that part, but she really does have the experience of being the Slayer has made her grow up. So while I very much, feel that like a power differential from age, especially in this frame, in this 16, 17 kind of age where children are transitioning into adulthood, but they don't have the experience, they don't have the knowledge, they don't understand what it is that they're getting into, and they can be completely easily manipulated. I mean, any circumstance in which somebody is incredibly vulnerable and is manipulated by someone who wants something from them in that way, it's all creepy and bad. Yeah. It's all predatory. So, I mean, that kind of thing, but because of all of these, we have all of these elements in this story that in this very particular instance, and because his interest in her is something that he is trying to avoid, he's not going after her that way. He says, we can't be together. I do want to kiss you. And that's one of the things I love about Angel. He's always extremely honest. He's straightforward. He doesn't play these games. I want to kiss you. I can't. I need to not be here, that kind of thing. And so I appreciate that with him. So there's so many things that kind of in that arena give this relationship a pass. But they are very, very specific to this instance. And I can understand anybody who is still highly troubled by that whole thing. Who doesn't like Angel and Buffy together because of any of these elements. I completely understand that. But because it's a story, because I understand all those, subtle differences, because not I understand, but it's in the story. All of these things that sort of give it a pass are in the story. I think that I understand why it can work.
Yes, I I do think that some of the creep factor with Angel is meant to work into that foreshadowing he's a vampire.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I love Angel as a vampire. I love that this is where the story's going. And I've been watching all along for clues about Angel being a vampire.
Right.
Because I don't remember whether I had that element of the show spoiled for me when I first watched it. I think I probably did. But I've been trying to put myself in the headspace of someone watching the show for the first time. And I feel like that twist makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think it does. It's one of those things, like a good twist. If you go back and watch the material before it, there's nothing, that belies it. There's nothing that would contradict, what the reality of the situation is. And so I think they did that very well.
Right. And when we say that something in fiction makes sense or that it feels plausible, what we're usually talking about is foreshadowing.
Yeah.
And that the twist follows the rules of the world.
Yes.
And I feel like they did a great job of setting that up as well. Like it feels really possible for him to be a vampire. But that moment when he turns, when they're kissing and he goes all vamp is really fascinating and kind of puzzling to me.
Yeah.
Because they kiss and they really start to get into it and he pulls away and then vamp face.
Right.
And then he sort of Batman's out the window because he's Angel.
Right. That's Angel's first Batman. I love it.
It is. Yeah. And he like slithers down the house.
Yes.
It's great. But I feel like I need Vampire Physiology 101.
Right.
Because what happens here? I mean, other than we're showing the audience that Angel's a vampire and this romance is doomed.
Right. Yeah.
Because he can't be a good vampire. Is vamp face tied to arousal? Is it loss of control? Is he just hungry because he's been stuck in Buffy's room all day? And based on the way the scene is played, I'm guessing it's meant to be an indicator of arousal, both in the sexual sense of the word, but also in the more general sense. There definitely seems to be a kind of pleasure response component to vamp face. I'm thinking about Darla in this episode when she's peering in the window at Joyce.
Yes.
And then later when she's taunting Buffy at the end, she's in vamp face the whole time. And I think there's something about the pleasure of, I mean, we'll talk about Darla because, oh my God, I love Darla.
We will. Yeah.
But there's something about the pleasure of I am in control in this moment. I am powerful in this moment. So I guess then that doesn't align with my suspicion that maybe it's loss of control in this moment for Angel. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it.
It's not terribly consistent. And the thing is that we have two basic things at war here. Like one of them is how we want the story to present, right? We don't want to see Darla looking like a young girl getting, stabbed. And like the vampires, when they get dusted or, when they're like evil, when they're doing evil things, they need to look like vampires, right? So that we don't look like we're killing humans, that is, so we don't cross that line. So part of that is the need of production. Angel turning vamp in the middle of the kiss. Part of that is, how much more dramatic could we possibly make it, right? And I think they do end up paying a little bit out of the world building budget for that, right? Because overall, generally, we are going to see throughout the run of the series, many vampires have complete sex and never have vamp face, right? When they're having sex, they're in human mode. And that's generally what we see, right? Because nobody wants to have to film, a sex scene with somebody in vamp face where you're kissing up all over these plastic fangs that are biting into your face. Okay.
Somebody wants to see that.
I will say nobody, right? I will say I think that generally when we see those tender moments, we want them to be tender and human. And then when we see the evil moments, we want those to be demonic, you know, and so that's how we kind of separate those things. But yeah, my understanding of vamp face, you know, with certain moments like this, you know, notwithstanding, right, that vamp face is something that a vampire can pull on or pull off at will. They can go into vamp face and they can go out of it. When they go into vamp face, they are more vampire. Like they're always like, even in human form, they're always exceptionally strong. But when they're in vamp face, it's sort of like engaging, you know, overdrive, right? You know, they're full on vampire. They've got full on vampire strength and powers and all that kind of stuff. But it can also come on involuntarily, usually when the feed is upon them, when they see human blood, when they, you know, that kind of thing. Like, especially if it's like Angel and he is trying to avoid that whole thing, right? You know, but human blood, like when he grabs Joyce, you know, and sees the blood, like that is the involuntary vamp face, you know, that happens to him, because that's just a natural instinct taking over, you know. So there is an involuntary measure to it, but it is also completely voluntary. So when we have Darla appearing in the window at Joyce, the choice is from a production standpoint, like what's going to be the creepiest moment here? How are we going to feel the menace of Darla to its maximum extent? And that is by having Darla in vamp face. Same thing with the end, you know, of the episode where we've got the big conflict with Darla. She is in vamp face the whole time, yet she's not about to feed. She is in vamp face. It makes her more powerful, which would make her better in the fight, but for reasons of which we will never understand. She's got guns. She's doing this like Western, you know, 2-shooter thing, which is just a bizarre thing, especially because guns in Buffy are pretty much universally reviled, and guns are bad for fiction. Guns are bad for storytelling because of the power differential, right? As soon as somebody has a gun, they have all this unearned power, and unearned power, you know, throws everything out of balance. And it's also not interesting. It's not interesting fictionally. It's not interesting anyway. Vamp power is earned because they paid for it with their soul. Right. You know, so they've got all this supernatural power, but they don't have a soul anymore. And so now they're just demons, you know, and Buffy's power is earned. I mean, kind of, she was chosen, but she also works really hard at it. She's training with Giles, you know, her power is earned. So we have Darla in this scene with these guns and this unearned power, which is just completely bizarre, and something that we're going to address a few times throughout the run of Buffy, with the general consensus being, I think, with the exception of this scene where guns are there and they're weird and they don't really belong there, and it's just a weird part of the scene. But generally in Buffy, if a gun is in a scene, we're making a statement about how bad guns are, how bad that unearned power is, and how incredibly dangerous that unearned power is. We're going to have that discussion a few times throughout the run of Buffy. But overall, as far as, you know, getting back to vamp face and vamp physiology, generally most of the textual evidence that we get throughout the run of Buffy, and also, you know, over in the Angel series, which does have a slightly shifted cosmology there. But generally it is that the vampire face is completely under their control, that it is like, you know, revving up into overdrive, but also can have an involuntary element to it, but that is not typically related to sex or sexual arousal.
Awesome.
So how'd that work for you? I just got a little lecture off top of my head.
That works great.
All right. So, I mean, some of it is textually inconsistent, but I think that overall that's generally the rule.
Yeah. Well, and some of it, at least in this scene with Buffy and Angel, is deeply symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when Joyce responds to Buffy's scream, Buffy says, "I saw a shadow."
Yeah.
And I said out loud in my living room, "One hell of a shadow."
Right.
But then I got to thinking about that symbolically, because that's the relationship fear. I mean, isn't it? You get close to someone, you have feelings for them, maybe you fantasize about them and write about it in your diary. And then when things get physical, they rip the mask off and become a totally different person. I mean, I feel like, I mean, I have known relationships that have gone that way to one degree or another. But on the other hand, I mean, it seems like a kind of natural outcome of the guy who's always hanging around and being mysterious and creepy in the shadows. I mean, of course, he's a scary monster who will totally kill you if he gets the chance.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So if we want to get all symbolic, I feel like I saw a shadow becomes shorthand for I saw the natural progression of the trope of romantic stalking and the bad boy hero.
Yes.
I mean,
okay. First of all, I love this. I want to spend a little time unpacking the shadow, right?
Yeah.
Because it is really interesting. And I mean, and she could have said, I saw a spider. She could have said, anything, right? But it's I saw a shadow. And I think that is, I don't know if they intended it that way, but it is, kind of significant in that way. And it is kind of, because we do have some of this and throughout the run of Buffy with the relationship with Angel, this idea that, this guy, he's all wonderful and lovely, and then you sleep with him. We're going to have that later in season 2, right? And then he turns into a monster. Mm-hmm. This is like the precursor to that, right? This is the pre-shadow. She sees this element in him. She knows that he's a vampire. She knows what he is, right? But then there's the but, right? But he has a soul. But he's not a bad vampire, right? You know, all of these excuses that we make when we see the red flag. I think that the face turning is a red flag, right? That this is something that is part of this. If he's stalking you, it's not romantic. This is going to end badly. Like there is that element within him that makes him prone to that sort of behavior. And that is his shadow self. Now, going into reality and everything, reality is no defense for fiction. It is no excuse for fiction either. They're different animals. Fiction is the boiling down of the essence of reality into something that we can understand that is somewhat simplified and very focused in telling one particular part of the story, right? But we do have this element of shadow in Angel, which is textually acknowledged. Meanwhile, we have Shadow Xander, right? That is never textually acknowledged. Mm-hmm. And yet these are kind of two sides of the same coin, aren't they?
Yeah, in a way, they definitely are.
And there is a shadow part of everybody. Like everybody has shadow. We're going to see Willow having shadow. We're going to see Giles having shadow. You know, everybody has shadow elements to them. But at what point are they more shadow than light? And I think that we have a lot of those in various degrees, throughout the run of Buffy, through a lot of these different characters, which I think is really interesting. And then we have, Darla, right? The master, the anointed one. And they are all shadow. They are nothing but shadow. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of an interesting thing too, right? We have this relationship that we see, this history of the relationship, right, with Darla and Angel, right? Mm-hmm. We were running through Europe together. Angel was supposed to sit at the master's right hand. They had the band together, and they have this long history and this long relationship. And there is, I don't think we get it necessarily textually, but subtextually, very close to the text, we have this hint that this was a romantic sexual relationship between Darla and Angelus, Also, we have Angelus, who is, who Angel was, and Angel, who Angel is now. And that whole split, he is a completely split identity. We're going to see that unfolding throughout the run of Buffy. So all of it, I think, is really interesting. And from this simple line, I saw a shadow. Yeah. There's so much to unpack from that throughout the rest of the run of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you say subtextually, but I think textually we have Angel and Darla.
I think it's fairly, but does she say anything about like we were together? They were killing people together, but I don't know that we get a hint that there's this sexual sense to them. There's definitely a sexual element to their relationship, but I don't think they textually say that. But I guess in the way that they are with each other, that's text.
The way that, the way they are with each other, the way she moves through his space when she's in his home. Yeah. The way she runs her fingers across his bed. Yeah. And then the way, they do have a physical interaction. Mm-hmm. And then the next time we see Darla, she is wearing red instead of blue, which is a pretty strong indicator to my visual sensibility that they had sex off screen.
In this episode?
Yes. Yes.
Oh man. Mind blown. Never. No.
Yes.
No.
They
didn't have sex.
Yes, they do.
He did not have sex with her.
Oh, yes, they do. He's holding her. I think it's the second or third time she comes to see him.
Yeah.
And
well, doesn't she only go to see him once?
No.
Oh God. Obviously, I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah. Oh, I am here. I am here for Angel and Darla. Angel and Buffy, meh. Angel and Darla, give me all of it. I love it. I love them together.
I love it.
No, but there's a moment she goes to see him and they're talking about she is trying to remind him of who he is. And she frames it very much like a sexual identity. You know, don't deny who you are. Don't deny what you want, all of that. And then he gets a little bit rough with her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she says, you're hurting me. That's good.
Uh-huh.
And there's this, I mean, they're very, I think he's got her up against the wall and their faces are very close together.
Yeah.
I mean, and then she's in a different outfit the next time we see her. So.
But she leaves, though. Don't we see her leave?
Sure. But I mean, symbolically, from a visual,
right.
visual representation standpoint, she's wearing blue, which is the color. Yeah, I mean, that's a heroine color, right? Mm-hmm. We see Buffy in blue all the time. Mm-hmm. That's a romantic heroine color. But then when we see her at the end in full vamp face after she's been with Angel, she's wearing red. And we see that often in fiction when a couple has consummated their relationship off screen. Mm-hmm. We will see the female character change into red clothing.
Interesting. That is really interesting. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Like, we'll throw it out to the listeners and see what they think. Did Darla and Angel have sex in this episode? You tell us. # still pretty. So yeah, no, that's interesting. It would never have occurred to me that he would have slept with her because, like, he is this tormented Byronic hero, and he, like, by nature will deny himself what he wants. You know, he wants to kiss Buffy, but he says, I can't and I shouldn't. And, you know, and then of course he does. Mm-hmm. And both times that he kisses Buffy, right? The first time he vamps out, she screams, and that does not end well. And the second time he kisses her, he gets burned in the chest. Like, he gets burned with a cross right over his heart. Like, there will always be a price to pay for him and Buffy. There's always a cost, you know? So yeah, I find that kind of, but like, because of that essential Byronic nature, you know, to Angel, I don't see him giving in to anything. Like, you know, he's got blood bags in his, you know, refrigerator. He hasn't fed off a living human in, you know, 80 years since the curse. And so I don't see him giving into a physical temptation that way, either feeding off of Joyce, even though, you know, his face goes right, and he's constantly fighting that. He's always fighting what he wants, you know, be it Buffy, be it Joyce, you know, or drinking blood from a human, or be it, you know, Darla in that scene, right? I mean, obviously they have a history together. Like, it's I think, you know, I'm wrong. It is textual. Just because it's not in the words in the script doesn't mean it's not textual. We see it on the screen. You know, there is a sexual vibe between them. There's a history there. So, yeah, I don't know. I find that interesting. But the change to red is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not a hill I'm willing to die on, but
I think it's a really interesting idea.
I mean, I think that something sexual beyond what we see on screen happens between Angel and Darla in that moment after we leave, after we cut away to wherever we go after that. I think something happens between them. Because he is very he's tempted in that moment, and she's very persuasive with him. The way she says I think it's the previous time that she comes to see him, and she says, I'm not afraid of you. I bet she is, though.
Yeah.
In this, I have your number, I have Buffy's number way. She's got so much.
I know everything, right?
Yeah. She's got so much confidence in her own ability her knowledge of the situation.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's for me, there's something there.
No, I like it.
Yeah. But a lot of what I love about this episode is the performances.
Oh yeah.
From pretty much everybody. I mean, there are some good performances in this episode.
Yeah.
I mean, Anthony Stewart Head is delightful. Allison Hannigan is a joy.
Yeah.
And Christine Sutherland, oh my God.
Yeah.
Joyce is barely in this episode, but good Lord, when she's going up to bed and she says, and Buffy, and gives her that look, and Angel's standing there. Joyce's face as she goes up the stairs is so wonderful. It is first class. It's late and I'm tired, but we are going to talk about this later.
Right.
Like, it's mom face. It is A+ mom face.
Yeah, she does a great job. And I especially love when she's in the hospital, right? She's like, well, I think they said it was a barbecue fork, but we don't have a barbecue fork.
We don't have a barbecue fork. Well, and in the hospital, I mean, I have been post blood loss a couple times in the hospital, not due to vampire attack, thank goodness. But she is appropriately loopy and sentimental. Like, that rang so true for me. She's just like, I just love everybody. It's just like, people at this school really care. Like,
people at this school are so great. Yeah, no, it's really nice. And this is, of course, the first time that Joyce and Giles meet, which is a big moment.
Yes.
Right? You know, I mean, the thing is, like, this episode is so about Buffy and Angel, and it's so huge that, you know, you kind of forget these, like, little things in the background. And Joyce and Giles meeting for the first time. I mean, Joyce and Giles are going to have a complicated and what I think is kind of a stunted relationship. Like, it never goes where it should go. I'm a big Joyce and Giles shipper. Like, I love Joyce and Giles. I want them together. We get a little bit of that in Band Candy in season 3, but you know, but we never really see that all the way through. But I love the relationship between the two of them. It's very, very sweet. And even though it, you know, ultimately, because the only time they actually are together is when they're both under an influence, and as we know in Buffy, you're never responsible for what you do when under the influence of something, right? You know, at the same time, like, I always kind of I'm always frustrated by the fact that we never really get anything like that with Giles and Joyce. But at the same time, I think that would bring us into, like, a more soap opera space where, like, everybody who could possibly be the same age and inclined toward each other is going to have sex, you know?
Right.
So the way that they did it was actually very fun and everything, but I always kind of I like that relationship, and I like seeing them. I would even have just enjoyed them being close friends, you know, and they never really get that close emotionally, which is something I would have loved to have seen with the two of them, but whatever, that's fine. What it is great, and it's fun to see them meet for the first time. Allison Hannigan is also really fantastic in this episode, and especially because she does, like, Willow has this sort of very childlike approach to the romance of it, you know, and she's like, oh, and then he kissed you, and then all this stuff, you know, and she's got this whole thing. And then she's like, well, what about the children? And I'm like, Jesus, she's 16. Let's slow your roll, Willow. You know? But that is a very kind of like this sort of sweet, young, naive thought about love, and it's just the romance, and it's so exciting, and it's all this stuff, but none of it's based in any kind of reality. And it's really fun to see Allison Hannigan play that innocence and that naivete up, especially up against, you know, here we have Buffy, who is forced to grow up much faster than she should, who does not have that innocence, you know, and then all the way over in the end of the spectrum to Angel, who doesn't have any innocence left. Like, it's gone. It's been gone a long time, you know, due to seeing some shit, you know. So I find that, like, really fun to see Allison Hannigan play the 16-year-old that Buffy never got to be. Yeah.
And again, I mean, we've talked about Willow being an access character to Xander. Because Willow loves Xander, I love Xander, even when I really don't love Xander.
Right.
Because Willow is all starry-eyed about this romance.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I'm in. Like, okay.
You got me.
All right, Angel and Buffy, fine. fine. Like if Willow is fawning over it, I'm just like, oh, Willow.
You gotta. I don't know. Like I understand. I completely understand and respect anybody who has a problem with Buffy and Angel because there are problems, but if you just let it go, if you just say, all right, if you just say, all right, I'm here, I'm on the ride, the little metal bars come down over my lap, I'm in, like let's go ahead and do this thing. If you just concede that because Buffy's the Slayer, she is not a child, that childhood ends at different places for different people. This is not Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, which is the most abhorrent power differential anywhere. And we'll never talk about that because I'll just rant for an hour. But I mean, this is not an abuse of power between Angel and Buffy, and he would not force himself on her. He is not fetishizing her. He is not interested in her because she's a child. He's interested in her because she's Buffy, right. And so like that, and Angel and Buffy are not my favorites. I actually much prefer Buffy and Spike. I think that's a much more interesting thing. And it also has this very deep love story that I enjoy. That said, I love Angel. I think there's a lot of stuff about Angel that is fun. And every time I watch through the series, I like Angel more every single time I come back to it. And it is so beautifully built. A vampire in love with a slayer. I mean, come on. This is a once in a lifetime romance. You got to just dive in.
Well, I have to say, so I've been watching every episode.
Yes.
2 or 3 times. Once just to watch it, once to take really, really detailed notes, and then sometimes a third time just to sort of reassess.
Yeah.
Like, did I really see what I thought I saw there?
Oh, that's why from now on you can always trust Noelle's memory of the episode better than mine, because I've seen these all 1,000 times, but I watch them in the 45 minutes before we record. Like, I watch it once, I take my notes, we're in, we're out, I got another podcast to record. So Noelle's memory of details will always be better than mine. If it ever comes down to, oh, did that happen from me? And Noelle says, yes, that happened, or no, that didn't happen. I think we can trust Noelle. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
I ended up watching this one 3 times. And the first time through, I was a little bit like, Buffy and Angel, blah, blah, blah. The second time through, there's some really great, I mean, we were talking about acting choices. David Boreanaz makes some really excellent acting choices that really made me go, all right.
I thought he was just a pretty boy. Like at this point, in my first run through, I was like, oh, he's pretty, And this episode, I think he does show what he can do. Well, okay. He shows some of what he can do.
Some of
what
it, yeah.
What we see from him throughout the run of both this and Angel is phenomenal. He's one of the best actors. Like, he is incredible. And I think really, really, like, undersung because he is so pretty, but he's amazing. And this isn't even close to, like, the best he can do. Like, he gets better with every episode.
But I definitely felt like I was seeing the first, like, inkling of his acting chops.
Yeah, absolutely.
When Buffy is bandaging Angel up, he smiles just a little bit every time she makes eye contact with him.
Yeah.
And I love that choice. He's sort of looking at her as she's working, but when she meets his gaze, he looks right back at her, and there's this teeny little smile that forms. And I'm just like, yes, like that feels very authentically like somebody who is trying to keep his feelings in his sock drawer a little bit and is failing because he is really drawn to this girl.
Yeah.
And not just because she's super powerful and the Slayer.
Right.
And I think this is the first time, he says, you even look pretty when you go to sleep. I think this is the first time anybody refers to Buffy as being pretty.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I just made a little note of that. I thought that was interesting. And then when he says, she offers him the bed because he's wounded, and he says something like, oh, I've had worse, in this really weary way. Like, he's this is nothing.
Yes.
This little scratch is nothing. And it brings us, and then Buffy's sort of taken aback by that. She's, okay. That she's a little flustered.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of something that we'll get later on in the series where we sort of compare vampire slaying with sexual experience. I'm thinking of Buffy and Riley when he confesses to her that he's dispensed with, 17 vampires. And
right.
He's very proud of himself. And she just kind of goes,
17. No, that's a lot. Yeah. She's like, I did 17 on Sunday, but that's fine.
Yeah. And it's almost that scene with Riley has a little bit of a, we are going over our sexual history vibe.
Oh no, absolutely.
And I feel like
their
we
number.
Get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We get that with Angel in this scene too, where he is experienced in a number of ways. And one of those ways is in this, he's fought horribly violent things before. This little scratch on his chest is not the end of the world for him.
Yeah.
And it's all it's just all of that history is under the surface with David Boreanaz in this episode, and I really, really enjoy it. But if we're talking acting and subtext and all of that loveliness, I gotta fangirl all over Julie Benz for a minute because damn.
Yeah, she's, you know what? I've never really enjoyed her performance in this episode. No, I mean, it feels to me a little overcooked, a little overdone. Right. I mean, she's vamping, she's super vamping. Right. At the same time, I'll give it to you. I mean, Julie Benz and we're going to see her more throughout the run of the series. We're going to see her over in Angel, in that show as well. And I like her more and more and more every time I see her. So I think for me, part of it is I see what she does later and her work is more subtle. And yet still menacing and interesting and crunchy. So for me, I think it's less that I don't like her here as that it's not my favorite. I know what she can do and I see what she does later. And I just get comparative about it. David Boreanaz does amazing work in this episode. And we do start to see what he's capable of. But he does stuff that's so much better, as we move on, that this also feels like it's really good, but it feels like just a drop in the bucket, for what we're going to get from these actors. And I think I feel the same way about Julie Benz. And I do feel like this performance is just a little bit overcooked, but it's good. I mean, she's committed. She's in it,
I love it. I love it. She's a vamp who's a literal vamp.
Yep.
I mean, come on. It works. I don't know. For me, Darla has to do all of this exposition heavy lifting. And
yeah, she does.
Something about her delivery just makes it work for me. I mean, the way she says Budapest, I mean, it kind of sounds... It sounds kind of dirty and I don't know what it is, but I want you to do it to me.
Oh, man. No,
she's
great.
just the most, she is the oldest 25-year-old I have ever seen. I believe all of that history and experience. I just love it. She's got this vocal quality that is similar to Lana Del Rey's singing voice. The ennui of too much power and unstructured free time. Yeah. And I mean, I'm tempted to sing Sunnydale Badass to the tune of Summertime Sadness, but I've already sung. This isn't Buffering the Vampire Slayer. I mean, we don't need to sing anymore. It's still pretty.
All right. Look, I just want to say, as producer of the show and owner of the company, you can sing anytime you want. I am down for you singing anytime you want. Just want to say blanket invitation, but you do what you're comfortable with.
Well, next week on the show. No.
Yes.
But she just sells it. And I don't know. Maybe maybe I like the bad girls. I don't know. But something about Darla's relationship with Angel, her relationship With the master, we get to see that more in depth too.
Yeah.
Starting with that opening shot where she's apparently springing fully formed out of his head. I thought that was interesting. There's some weird depth of field in this episode.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with that. We've got this recurring shot where we've got multiple people in the frame and they're all in focus.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
the people in the background, and it creates
That
this
is always
really
weird.
It's so weird because it throws off that forced perspective. I mean, we're trying to look 3D in 2D, and when everyone is in focus, foreground and background, it's kind of like
it flattens the space. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like a weird family portrait.
Yes.
We have that motif, we have that visual light motif of the family portrait throughout this episode with different characters in the foreground and in the background. That shows up with lots of different configurations of characters throughout the episode. We start off with Darla and the Master and the Anointed One, whose name we discover is Colin.
Right?
His name is Colin.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a moment with Buffy and Giles when they're about to do their quarterstaff training, where he's behind her and she's in the foreground and they're both in focus. We've got Angel and Darla when she's skulking around his apartment. She's behind him but in focus. And then we do get several times this shot with Darla and the Master and the Anointed, and it's interesting because the Master says a couple things about family.
Yeah.
And that at one point he indicates Colin and he says, "You see how we all work together for the common good? That's how a family is supposed to function."
Yeah.
So we have Darla and the Master and Colin as this weird little nuclear family underground. And I kind of want to say more about that, but I also don't really know what to say about that.
No, it's interesting. Well, the Master does. I mean, the Master is definitely prone to this idealization. You know, he plays into his own mythology, you know, with this idea of family. And everybody is loyal to him. You know, everybody is all about him. But he's like, "Oh, we're family unless you fail to kill the Slayer, in which point, you know, I'll kill you." And, you know, I mean, it's really interesting. And I love that you picked out that that kind of family portrait, that kind of flat, everybody in focus, you know, sense of family portrait. In this episode was directed by Scott Brazil. He is, I believe, a one-time director. I think this is the only episode he directs, although I'll double check that, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But it's kind of an interesting, like, visual thing that we don't do very much. More often, directors opt for a shallow depth of field, you know, because it gives us such a greater sense of the space. It makes the space feel bigger. TV sets aren't always necessarily, you know, like as big as they feel. Sometimes they feel bigger than they are. Sometimes they look smaller or whatever. It just depends on how we're shooting it and how that all comes together. But choosing specifically to broaden that depth of field so wide that everybody's like in perfect focus. It does give a sense of a flattening of space. It does kind of give it a claustrophobic feel. And I'm wondering if that's deliberate. Do you think we're deliberately going for claustrophobia, or is he just like, I just want to see everybody?
I think that what we're going for is the groupings, because it's an episode about, in the broadest sense, it's an episode about relationships.
Yeah.
And it's an episode about family. And I mean, the episode is called Angel. And we have some discussion in the first scene with Darla about who he is and where he belongs. He's living above ground, like one of them.
Right.
But he can't really be in the human world, but he's not really in the vampire world either.
Yeah.
So I think we're showing maybe these little collections of kind of chosen family with Giles and Buffy working together with the Master and his little underground group of followers. We've got, I want to say in the hospital, there's a shot in the hallway with Buffy and Giles in the foreground and Xander and Willow in the background. We've got that little family structure there. I don't know. I think it might be wanting to group everyone together in these particular configurations.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, yeah. Or it might just be one of those, you look through the camera and go, well, that looks cool.
That looks okay. Yeah.
That looks good.
Yeah. I think for a depth of field that is outside of the norm, for one that's particularly shallow or one that's particularly broad, I think that you have to take certain steps to make sure that happens. So I don't think that you do that necessarily as accidentally, as some of them might be. So I think it probably is purposeful without seeing much more of Brazil's work. And I'm not familiar with his work in any other context, then I don't know. But that is really interesting. I love that you pick up stuff like this. I've seen this, I don't even know how many times. I've never noticed that before.
Yeah. Yeah. And closeness and distance are also themes in this episode. I mean, couldn't he be a good vampire? Like, isn't it okay that we're this close?
Right. Yeah.
And then when Buffy when she decides that no, she really has to kill him because she thinks has attacked her mother, she chooses the crossbow. Yeah. Which, for one thing, puts us in that sort of maiden warrior space. I mean, we're used to seeing the woman warrior with her bow. Yeah. But also that puts more distance between Buffy and her target. Right. If she were to stake Angel, she would have to get right up close to him and touch him. But in order to kill him, she is putting literal distance between herself and him. Right. With
she can't
a weapon
stake him.
Yeah. So, ideas about distance and connection, ideas about relationships and what that looks like, and family groupings and who belongs with whom and all of that. I think we're exploring a little bit of that with the shot composition.
I love it. I think that's great.
Yeah. But speaking of that scene, yes, where Buffy goes to kill Angel, let's talk a little bit about Darla and her unearned power with those guns. Yeah. I mean, we talked a little bit already about how guns are strange in the Buffyverse, but I think it's very interesting that Darla shows up, in her red outfit with her full vamp face, just completely sure that she has all the power here. Yeah. And she's brought guns.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I'm interested. Do you see something in the guns? Like, the guns have always felt to me like this. It's creepy in the sense that it's so cognitively dissonant. Right? Because you've got, here we have Buffy, right? The modern girl, right? Yeah. Using a crossbow, using an ancient weapon, right? And a weapon that does not have the level of unearned power. It is a weapon of distance, but, you shoot it once, you've got to re-string it, you've got to, and it's not a modern weapon. I mean, it is something that gives you different power, but it's not necessarily a whole bunch of unearned power. Whereas with guns, you're just shooting, you're shooting like mad, and you can do an incredible amount of damage, without really understanding like how it works. And that's where a lot of the unearned power comes from. Guns have a crazy power differential, and that's why they are so incredibly dangerous, and why they're not fun in storytelling, because you get that power differential, it's unearned, and like, it's over, yeah. So here we have Darla, who has this ancient history. My family goes back to the to the beginning of the colonial times or whatever. So we have the she has lived. She is old. She is of an ancient time, and yet we have her using this fairly modern weapon in a way that does feel somewhat dissonant, and it adds a little bit when you see a vampire with guns. it adds a little bit to that creepiness, because not only is she already a vampire, not only is she already, supernaturally strong, not only does she have the ability to kill people like with her teeth, not only is her very nature, that she literally, it's not just killing people, it is feeding off of them, right? All of that brings into this idea of vampire. You throw guns in there, and it just feels so wildly out of context, and it feels wildly in the wrong space. I'm really curious to see what you saw there.
I definitely saw a kind of overconfidence and cockiness. It's something that Darla has been building up the whole episode, really. She's it starts off. We start off with Darla, and she's in awe of the three. She echoes the master saying, he'll send the three. And then they fail, and she gets to dust them.
Yes.
With all of this glee. She's just so delighted to be doing that, both as an act of violence and as an act of service to the master. So she's, over the course of the episode, her power and her sense of herself and her importance really builds when she makes her way into Buffy's house, when she's talking to Joyce and making jokes about, my family sort of goes back to those times.
Yeah.
That's a joke. I mean, it's a joke for the audience, but it's a joke for herself.
Right.
She's making a joke for herself because she is delighted by her own cleverness in that moment. And then, let's see. And then she kind of lords over Angel in her scenes with him. She throws Joyce's body at him.
Yeah.
In this very dominant sort of way, just say yes. You want to. There's this real, I said it earlier that she really has Angel's number. She feels like she has Buffy's number. So by the time we get to this last scene where Darla is confident that her, for lack of a better word, seduction of Angel, the way that she's been talking to him about who he is, who Buffy is, where he belongs, she's very confident that her plan is working. She's sassy. Before then, she talks back to the master a little bit.
Yeah.
She steps out of line there a little bit, and as her confidence in her own evil cleverness grows, we finally get to this point at the end where she's full vamp face, guns ablazing. She just has no... It never crosses her mind that she might lose.
She has no fucks to give. She's like, yeah, I'll take guns.
No fucks to give. No fucks to give. It's just, and guns feel so mundane in the supernatural world.
In that context, they absolutely do. Yeah.
Especially for someone like Darla who could just, leap on Buffy and bite her, possibly, and kill her that way.
Yeah.
To say, you know what, I don't even care enough to be all vampire-y.
Right.
Vampire-y.
You're not even worth the vamp out, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna stand here and shoot you. I'm gonna shoot at you.
Right.
So many bullets, what is it? So many body parts.
So few bullets, right? Yes.
Yeah, she's just, and I don't know much about guns, but that was a whole lot of bullets for two tiny little guns.
That was.
It was wretched excess.
It was
on purpose.
Excess. Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. It felt nutty to me. It just felt so and there's a space for that kind of cognitive dissonance, like within a story, but it felt completely outside. It just felt like a wrong call in this moment for Darla. And while I enjoy the wild excess of it, I think I would have enjoyed a little more traditional. I think part of the thing that bugs me with Darla is that there is so much going on with her. Like there's so much of interest, and I mean, we've dusted her, and yet somehow we're going to be seeing her again in the future. So yeah, I mean, that's going to it'll be over an angel, but it's really interesting, and there's so much more depth. And so from our perspective in this episode, Darla, purely within the context of just this episode, she is portrayed very much as the crazy ex-girlfriend, right? She's nuts. She's over the top. Yes. It's, and it feels like this, she's completely like, there's nothing to her side of this, like her side of this, which becomes so much more interesting when we get it later on, is, we did these things together. We were a team. You were my love as much as I can love because I'm a vampire. Like, right. we did this, and we had this relationship. And you're giving it up for her, for a schoolgirl, like all that kind of stuff. Like I would have loved to have seen something from Darla with as much time as we spend with her, where it's not just like, the pinwheels in the eyes, crazy ex-girlfriend stuff, that there's a little bit more going on with her, that we kind of can see her jealousy, her, she's lost Angelus for like 80 years. They're finally reunited. Like that's, there's got to be a thing like I would have liked to have seen what we're going to get from her later. So in this episode, it's not my favorite Darla. It's not my favorite moment with Darla, but I do appreciate it for what it is. But the guns still, like if I could go and erase anything from this episode, it's the guns. The guns take us into camp. It just gets campy in that moment. And I don't think that like in this episode where we are really hitting some really nicely formed emotional notes, that having Darla out here, damned Annie Oakley, it's a bit too much, So, yeah.
Oh, I love it.
If she had been vamped, if she had been turned into a vamp in like the American West, I'd be into it. I'd be like, all right, you're bringing a little bit of yourself, but it's colonial times, like,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then her last line, I find Darla's, she gets dusted here, and I'm so sad to see her go.
Yeah.
But she says, she's sure she's won, and she says, come on, Buffy, take it like a man.
Mm-hmm.
And I just went, oh, excuse me? Like, what does David Greenwald think that phrase means? I wonder.
I think it was meant ironically, because one girl in all the world, and she's the most powerful thing, and then to still say take it like a man, I think that was meant ironically. But yeah, it clunks a little bit.
Yeah, but then here we've got, that's the thing that does it. That's the line that does it. After she says that to Buffy, that's when Angel stakes her.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I love that moment so much. She's super, super dominant and scary, and she's speaking low in her register.
Mm-hmm.
And then Angel stakes her, and she turns around, and her voice goes up 2 octaves.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Angel, this betrayal, and this totally blindsided by him turning on her in that way. And I love it. I love the vocal shift. I love the nuance.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to me. I love the way she's dominant with women in the episode, and she's dominant with Angel too, except she wants to be submissive to him.
Mm-hmm.
When she is most sure of her hold over him is when he's holding her and hurting her. And I love their relationship dynamic so much, and I am here for Angel and Darla.
No, it is really great. It is really good. I kind of wish she had called him Angelus though. because that's who she knows. Like the split in Angel's identity is so sharp, and we're so early. Like I'm coming at this from a context of having seen everything in both series. So, I mean, it's not something in the moment, but like, she would know him as Angelus.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's the guy she knows. She doesn't know Angel. She's not interested in Angel. She's not speaking to Angel. When she's in his apartment trying to get him to kill Buffy, she's speaking to Angelus. Like, that's the dude she knows. And to be betrayed by Angel is expected. To be betrayed by Angelus, well, actually, knowing Angelus would also be expected.
Right. But then you would play it a little bit differently, I think. You would play it like both the sorrow at being chosen, but the sorrow at not being chosen in the romantic sense, and the pleasure at seeing that last glimmer of violent of Angelus before she's dusted. Yeah, there's a lot you could do there.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good. They didn't have all of that at the time. The people writing this, they had yet to build all of that. But even so, like, if you look at even what we know textually in this episode, she would know him as Angelus. That's the guy she'd be talking to. So I don't know. That's just my thing. All right. So I think we've covered most everything that we had to talk about in this fantastic episode. Do you have anything for the girl power moment of the week?
I do. It's very subtle.
Yeah. That's all right. I like subtle.
Not subtle, but when Buffy fights the three, she says, I don't want to fight all of you unless I have to. And the way she dispenses with the first guy is with a kick to the groin.
Yes.
And I really enjoy that.
Exactly. Even on vampires, that's a sensitive spot.
Well, I was just going to say, Vampire Physiology 101, apparently the groin situation continues to be an issue.
Yeah.
For them.
Yeah. Well, they've got to have their, sensitive spots, right?
Oh, yeah.
They can't.
And when
be
we
immune.
get into vampire sex later, we can talk more about vampire physiology.
Yeah, we should have, actually, you and Kelly Jones should have that discussion because I've read the messages. We messaged back and forth, all of us, and they had a big discussion about it. And I just basically want to record the two of you talking about that, but we will absolutely get to that, definitely.
For a very special bonus episode.
For a very special bonus. Listen to Noelle and Kelly talk
Jones
about...
Noelle LaCroix discuss vampire sex.
That is the best. Everybody needs to have that. All right, so what's your favorite part?
My favorite part is, shocking no one if you've made it this far through the podcast. My favorite part, for real, is Darla's little physicality, the sidestep that she does when she's kind of testing the door force field.
Yeah.
And Joyce has said, would you like to come in? And she does this little, I'm just going to nudge my shoulder up against the doorway and, hey, I made it through. And she says, it's very nice of you to invite me into your home. And this quiet delight, hey, my plan worked. Right. It's just she's so pleased with herself. And I just love that little vampire testing the force field maneuver.
Yeah. No, I can definitely understand that.
Yeah.
It was very cute.
Yes. Darla forever, guys.
All right. I think Noelle's got a new tattoo to go out and get.
Hey, whoa. All right. Back it up. Careful now.
All right. So for my favorite part, I would have to say that it is, it's the kiss at the end. It's the visual representation of the impossible love, the cross. She has this, this symbol of goodness and purity that burns, a mark over his heart. Like, it's really nicely done. And, and I gotta say, I'm a romance girl. Like, I will always, and pretty much unless a romance is terribly written, I'm gonna love it, so, and this one is not terribly written. This is nicely established, and I love that moment. I think it's great.
And it's the necklace he gave her.
Yes.
So good.
I know. No, it's all
such a great moment.
Well, that's it for today. To join in the discussion on Twitter, follow me at Lani Diane Rich and Noelle at Noelle Aloud, and use the hashtag StillPretty. You can also visit the Chipperish forums. Go to chipperish.com, click on forum, and join in the fun.
Or you can keep Chipperish Media going to the tune of $1 a month or more and gain access to the live chat in Discord, where you can hang out with me and Lani and all the Chipperish patrons who have no conscience, no remorse. It's an easy way to live. Visit patreon.com/chipperish to find out more.
You can also show your support for Still Pretty by going to Apple Podcasts and giving us a review. That's one of the most effective ways to show support for any podcast that you love. Or you can use your social media platform of choice to tell your friends. Word of mouth is a powerful thing.
Absolutely. We will be back next time with iRobot Eugene, the 8th episode of Season 1. Until then, you and I both know what you hunger for. What you need. Hey, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's who we are.